Everyone, welcome to the new video. So in our last video, which was our first video of our Kubernetes playlist, so it was what is Kubernetes and why it exists. Today we will see the architecture of Kubernetes. Okay, I'll explain it very briefly. So without further ado, let's go. So, if you've ever run a Kubernetes cluster and wondered who actually decides where my pod runs, or who keeps my app alive, where all this cluster data is stored, so today we are going to break down Kubernetes architecture in the simple possible way with diagram and a live terminal demo. So, Kubernetes doesn't run on single machine. It runs on cluster, and cluster is a group of machines working together. So there are two main parts. First is control plane and the second is worker node. So think of it like control plane is like a brain and worker node is like a muscles. Okay, so brain is controlling the muscles. So what is control plane and what is worker node? So control plane makes decision that it schedules the pod, it maintains desired state, it monitors cluster health, it responds to API requests. So whenever we want to communicate with Kubernetes, we need to make an API request, or how much pod will be there, if it is not in running state, then how to make it running. Every decision is taken by control plane. By worker node, so all uh, where the pod will run and how the monitoring of pod will be happening, all this pod is running on worker node. So it runs your application, it contains pod, runs or container runtime or docker or containerd, and have kubelet and kubeproxy, which we'll discuss. So mainly this is what is controlling whatever is happening on worker node. Okay, whatever is running on worker node. So this is a Kubernetes cluster architecture. You can see in a cluster we have two control plane, we have worker node. A control plane is a brain which have several components like API server, scheduler, controller, manager, etc. We will discuss about it in detail, what all it does. And in worker node we have nodes. Okay, node 1, in node 2, everything in every node it will be like this: kubelet, kubeproxy, pods. In node 2 also it will be same. Okay, so this is whatever worker node is comprised of all these things, and control plane is comprised of all these things. Okay, so next we are moving ahead. Components of control plane: the API server, it's a gatekeeper. So API server is the heart of Kubernetes. All commands go through API server without API request, because we have to make a API, either kubectl or kubectl talks to API server. So all the communication happens through API server. It validates requests, updates, etc. What is etc? We'll see. So example, if we run kubectl apply -f deployment.yaml, so the request first goes to API server. Okay, then what is etcd? Etcd is a database. It is like keeping everything recorded. It stores cluster state, it stores pods, deployment secret, config map in a distributed key value store. So if etcd is lost, cluster state is gone. So etcd remembers everything about your cluster. Okay, what is working, what is not working, what got terminated, what can be made working, everything is recorded in etcd. Then comes scheduler. It's a decision maker. When you create a pod, it doesn't immediately go to a node. The scheduler looks at available nodes, because sometimes you will get the error like it is not able to schedule a pod, because scheduler is creating a pod. It checks that how much nodes are available, and where it checks the data in etcd, and accordingly it will schedule a pod. It checks CPU memory, decide where to run the pod. If node 1 has more memory, pod goes there. Okay, then comes the controller manager, and controller manager is self-healing brain. So the controller manager makes sure reality matches our desired state. So if we have mentioned that I want 3 replicas, and if one pod crashes, controller manager tries to create a new one. So that's self-healing. So controllers include replica set controller, deployment controller, okay, and node controller. Now comes the worker node components, and each worker node contains kubelet, talks to API server, ensures containers are running, and reports status. So how worker node status goes to so how worker node reports its status to control, and then control plane decide that okay, we have to take this step now. So kubelet does all that communication of worker node to the control plane. It reports status, ensures container, it talks to API server. Kubeproxy is handling the networking, manages service routing, and container runtime. It is helpful. Why is it required? Because it runs container. So kubeproxy helps in handling the networking part. So these are the components of worker node. Now comes how everything works together. Everything works together. Like if you say, if you have run kubectl apply -f app.yaml, so what will happen? First the request will go to, from kubectl it will go to API server. From API server it will store data in etcd. From scheduler will pick a node. Controller manager ensures correct replicas. Kubelet starts container on worker node, and kube proxy exposes networking. So if the flow is asked, you can give this flow. So this is how everything works. Okay. Now this is the task I'll explain, but before this we will have a demo. But I have given this task, and at the end of the video, after watching the video, try to complete this task. So draw the architecture, explain Kubernetes. So this is first, then try to explain Kubernetes architecture in 60 seconds without looking at notes. And then this demo which I will show, try to replicate if you have installed Minikube or if you have cluster. So let's go and see this demo. Meanwhile, I'll give this assignment in the description box also for your reference. First of all, I have run, this is a mini cube. So I have run kubectl cluster info. So we can see the cluster info, like where control plane is running, what is the endpoint, where the core DNS is running, okay, DNS service, okay. Then if we do kubectl get nodes, then we will see the control plane. So how many nodes are working, and so it's a mini cube, so only one control plane. There will be, if suppose if there were worker nodes, so worker nodes would have been listed too. Then if we do kubectl get pods -a, because we are doing pod -a, it's all. So we should see the control plane pods also. But right now, because it's a mini cube, so we are just seeing the cube system, etcd mini cube, cube API server mini cube, cube controller. So as you can see, etcd, cube API server, cube controller, cube proxy, cube scheduler. So these are all our pod which we have created, and this is the control plane pods. So you can see all the pods that are listed and the components that I said which are required to be running for control plane. Okay, and these are the pods running in the worker nodes. So yeah, these only demo that I wanted to show. You can try these 3 commands too at your end if you have cluster or any EKS, AKS or Minikube kind, anything installed in your laptop. So yeah, that's all. That's all for today's video. I hope it's helpful. Please let me know views in the comment section. Till then, take care. Bye.